Have you ever noticed that the kinder you are, the less people seem to take you seriously? You go out of your way to be thoughtful, understanding, helpful, and somehow, that only makes others expect more, respect less, and give back even less. It's one of the most painful paradoxes in life. You try to do everything right, to be the good person, the one who keeps the peace, and yet you end up feeling invisible. Like the more you give, the more you disappear. Maybe you can't explain it logically, but your body knows it. The tightness in your chest when you swallow the words you wish you could say. The exhaustion that hits you after another day of saying yes when you meant no. That quiet anger that builds when someone interrupts you, talks over you, or assumes you'll pick up the slack again. You tell yourself it's fine. That being nice is the right thing to do. But something deep down whispers that it's not fine. That you've crossed a line between kindness and self-betrayal. Think about how often this pattern shows up. At work, where the person who pushes back gets promoted, and the one who plays nice gets overlooked. In relationships, where the partner who sets boundaries is respected, while the one who avoids conflict gets taken for granted. Even in friendships, where you carry everyone's problems, but no one asks how you're doing. It's enough to make you wonder, why does goodness so often turn into weakness in people's eyes? Why do cold, assertive, even manipulative individuals seem to command more respect than kind-hearted, decent ones? It's not just unfair, it's confusing. Because you were taught to believe the opposite. You were told that being good would bring you love, that being kind would attract kindness, that if you just kept giving, someday it would come back around. But life keeps showing you a different reality. You try to stay patient, understanding, forgiving, and somehow you end up feeling small. And then, the cruelest part, you start to blame yourself for it. Maybe I'm too nice. Maybe I don't know how to stand up for myself. Maybe I should just toughen up. But even that thought feels wrong, doesn't it? Because you don't want to become cold, bitter, or cruel. You just want balance. You want to be respected without losing your heart. That's where this conversation begins, because there is a logic behind this. A dark, uncomfortable, but true logic. 500 years ago, Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. That line has been quoted endlessly, usually as a symbol of ruthlessness, but what he was really pointing to was something much deeper. People respond more strongly to boundaries than to promises. They respect strength more than submission. And it's not because people are evil, it's because human nature recognizes power. The mind is wired to respect what it cannot easily manipulate. When you are endlessly kind, endlessly forgiving, endlessly available, you send a message without realizing it. You tell the world, you can take from me, I'll still be here. And in that moment, the balance of power shifts. Not because others are consciously cruel, but because boundaries were never made clear. People respect what they sense can protect itself. They value what has limits. And when kindness has no limits, it starts to lose its meaning. Imagine kindness as water. It nourishes, it gives life, but when it floods without boundaries, it destroys everything in its path. That's what happens when you give too much of yourself without discernment. The world starts drinking from your well, and before long, it runs dry. Then people complain that you've changed, that you're colder now, less giving. But what really happened is that you finally realized, you cannot be endlessly kind in a world that rewards only those who know where to stop. And maybe that's where you are right now. Tired of being the peacekeeper. Tired of being the one who always understands. Tired of holding it all together while others test, take, and use your energy like it's free. You start to feel that something inside you is shifting. You no longer want to be liked, you want to be respected. You no longer want to be needed, you want to be valued. That's not selfishness. That's evolution. Because here's the hard truth, being good is not enough. Being kind, empathetic, generous, these are beautiful qualities, but without strength, they become a weakness that predators can smell from miles away. It's like bleeding in the ocean, sooner or later, the sharks will come. That doesn't mean you stop being kind. It means your kindness needs structure. It needs boundaries. It needs a backbone. So, The question isn't, should I stop being good? The question is, how can I be good without being taken for granted? How can I show compassion without losing self-respect? How can I keep my warmth without becoming someone's doormat? These are the questions we'll explore together, because once you understand the psychology behind respect and fear, everything changes. You'll see that you don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight to be respected. You just need to embody quiet strength, the kind that doesn't beg for approval but naturally commands attention. Think of the people you respect most. They aren't necessarily the loudest or the harshest. They're calm, grounded, clear. You sense they won't tolerate disrespect, even if they never raise their voice. That's real authority. And it's available to you, too. You just have to reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away in the name of peace. So, if you're tired of being overlooked, if you're done explaining yourself, if you've felt that quiet rage of realizing your kindness has become a cage, this is your turning point. Because being kind without strength is not virtue, it's self-abandonment. And the moment you decide to stop abandoning yourself, everything around you will start to shift. This isn't about becoming hard. It's about becoming whole. A person who can love deeply and still say no. Who can forgive without forgetting. Who can care without collapsing. That is real kindness, the kind that commands respect, not pity. And it all begins when you stop asking for permission to be who you are and start standing as someone who knows their worth. Now, take a moment and ask yourself, where in your life have you been too kind for too long? Where have you confused patience with fear, or forgiveness with avoidance? Because that's where your power is waiting for you to reclaim it. Let's talk about the psychology of respect, because this is where everything starts to make sense. The truth is, people don't respond to kindness alone. They respond to power. And I don't mean domination or manipulation. I mean the quiet, grounded kind of power that radiates from someone who knows who they are and what they will not tolerate. Our brains are wired to recognize it instantly. From the moment we're children, we sense who we can test and who we can't. You can see it in classrooms, playgrounds, offices, families. It's the same everywhere. People instinctively calibrate their behavior based on perceived boundaries. When someone gives off the energy of "you can't mess with me," others tread carefully. When someone radiates "I just want peace," others unconsciously test how much peace they can take before being stopped. Psychologists call this dynamic dominance hierarchy perception. It sounds harsh, but it's built into human nature. Even in the most polite social settings, everyone is constantly scanning for cues, tone, posture, eye contact, confidence. These signals tell the brain how much respect, caution, or attention to assign to another person. And guess what? Excessive agreeableness, constant apologizing, or over-explaining tells the brain one thing: this person is safe to push. It doesn't mean people are evil, it just means they follow instinct. The mind respects boundaries, not intentions. It listens to conviction, not explanations. Think about this. Have you ever seen someone at work who barely speaks but somehow everyone respects them? They don't beg for attention. They don't try to please. But when they talk, people stop and listen. That's not luck, it's posture, energy, and clarity. Their boundaries are felt even when unspoken. Now contrast that with the person who's always saying sorry, always accommodating, always smiling to avoid conflict. Nice, helpful, reliable, and yet constantly dismissed. Not because their work is poor, but because their energy says, "I'll adjust for you." That's what people hear, even if no words are spoken. Respect, at its core, is psychological. It's not about being liked. It's about being recognized as someone who cannot be easily moved. When you communicate boundaries clearly, through tone, body language, or decisions, the message you send to the world is simple: there are lines you don't cross. The brain registers that as strength. And strength automatically creates respect. It even generates a mild, healthy form of fear, not terror, but awareness. The same way you feel cautious walking near an electric fence. You don't hate it. You just know it demands awareness. That's what personal authority does. It creates invisible fences around your dignity. Now, let's be honest. Many of us were taught the opposite. We were told to be understanding, patient, forgiving. We were told that saying no is selfish, that standing up for ourselves is rude, that keeping the peace is a virtue. But here's what happens when you internalize that lesson for too long. You start to equate goodness with submission. You believe that to be loved, you must shrink. To be accepted, you must over-explain. To be respected, you must sacrifice. But human psychology doesn't reward that, it punishes it. People might say they value kindness, but what they truly respect is boundaries. Every abusive boss, manipulative partner, or entitled friend operates on one simple calculation: how far can I go before this person pushes back? If the answer is probably never, the abuse continues. That's not cynicism, it's human behavior. Fear and respect are two sides of the same coin. Fear creates distance, respect creates order. You can't have one without acknowledging the other. And that's the part most good people miss. They try to separate kindness from strength, but the two are inseparable. Without boundaries, kindness loses its integrity. Imagine a lion in a cage at the zoo. Visitors walk by, take pictures, and even mock it. But the same lion in the wild commands reverence. Nothing about its essence changed, only its environment and freedom. The difference is that in the wild, the lion owns its territory. It has boundaries, and that presence alone demands respect. The same applies to you. When your kindness exists without self-respect, you become the caged lion. But when your kindness has edges, when it comes from choice, not fear, you become untouchable. So how do we apply this to real life? It starts with your smallest reactions. When someone interrupts you, do you let it slide? When you feel uncomfortable but stay silent to avoid conflict, do you realize what message that sends? Every time you suppress discomfort to keep the peace, you train others to disregard your needs. The human brain learns through feedback, and your silence is feedback. It says, you can cross that line, and I'll stay quiet. And once that pattern forms, breaking it becomes a challenge, but not impossible. You don't need to shout, fight, or become harsh. Real power is not loud, it's calm. It's in how you hold eye contact, how you pause before answering, how you say no without explanation. The moment you stop explaining, you reclaim authority. The moment you stop defending your choices, people start listening. The brain associates confidence with truth. When you sound unsure, people question you. When you sound certain, they align with you. It's primal psychology at work. And here's the most fascinating part. Studies in behavioral psychology show that humans react faster and more attentively to signals of power than to signals of affection. We're wired for survival, not harmony. When someone sets clear boundaries, the mind perceives stability. When someone avoids conflict at all costs, the mind perceives weakness. That's why Machiavelli's insight still applies centuries later. Love is unstable, but respect lasts. You can be kind and still be firm. You can be compassionate and still say no. You can be understanding and still demand to be heard. The key is to balance empathy with self-respect, to make kindness your choice, not your obligation. Because when your kindness comes from strength, it becomes sacred. When it comes from fear, it becomes self-erasure. So start noticing the signals you send. How do you stand when you speak? How often do you apologize for things that don't need apologies? How often do you fill silence just to ease tension? Every one of these moments is a small negotiation for your power. And the more you practice presence, firm, calm, and clear, the more the world starts to treat you accordingly. People don't respect good intentions, they respect clear energy. And the moment your energy says, I know who I am, and I decide what happens here, you won't have to beg for respect ever again. You'll command it, quietly and naturally, because the psychology of respect begins, and ends, with you. Let's talk about the hardest part of all, the dilemma of being a good person. Because this is where the internal war happens, the one no one sees. You want to be kind. You want to do the right thing. You want to keep your heart open. But somewhere along the way, your kindness started to cost you. It stopped feeling like love and started feeling like exhaustion. You find yourself giving when you don't want to, smiling when you're angry, forgiving when it still hurts. And the scariest part? You don't even know how to stop. Because stopping feels like betraying who you are. That's the trap so many good people fall into, the confusion between kindness and weakness. Society has conditioned you to believe that if you say no, you're rude. If you set boundaries, you're cold. If you pull back from those who take advantage of you, you're selfish. So, you keep bending, accommodating, understanding. You keep telling yourself that being nice is noble. But what if it's not always noble? What if, sometimes, it's just fear wearing a mask of virtue? Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being liked. You call it compassion, but deep down, it's the terror of losing approval. Psychology calls this validation dependency. It's when your sense of worth quietly attaches itself to how others see you. You crave being liked the way a starving man craves bread. Every compliment feels like oxygen. Every bit of disapproval feels like suffocation. So, you learn to play small to stay safe. You say yes to keep the peace. You avoid confrontation because confrontation feels like abandonment. But the price you pay for this peace is enormous. Because the more you please others, the more you abandon yourself. Let me say that again. The more you please others, the more you abandon yourself. That's self-abandonment, and it's one of the most dangerous habits of the human heart. You start erasing your own desires, your own opinions, your own needs, just to keep love within reach. You become the listener, the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who absorbs everyone else's pain but has no space left for your own. And while everyone around you feels better, you slowly disappear. You know this feeling. You feel it when you're sitting in a room full of people and yet feel completely unseen. You feel it when someone hurts you and you immediately make excuses for them. You feel it when you agree to something that drains you, then lie awake at night wondering why you can't say no. That's not kindness, it's programming. It's a subconscious pattern learned long ago, maybe in childhood, when love was conditional. When being good was the only way to feel safe. Maybe you grew up in a home where speaking up caused conflict, where your emotions were dismissed, or where love came with strings attached. So, you learned to be the easy one. The good one. The one who doesn't cause trouble. And it worked, back then. It kept you safe. But as an adult, that same survival mechanism has turned into a prison. Because what once protected you is now what's holding you back. Here's the truth most people never say out loud: not all goodness is healthy. There's a kind of goodness that heals and uplifts, and there's another kind that destroys quietly. The first one is born out of choice, out of strength, out of love that includes yourself. The second is born out of fear. And when your kindness comes from fear, it's not love, it's compliance. It's the emotional equivalent of kneeling down so no one can hit you. So how do you know when your kindness has crossed that invisible line? The answer is simple. Kindness without boundaries always breeds resentment. If you're giving and you start to feel bitter, tired, or unappreciated, it's not because people don't value kindness, it's because your kindness has turned into self-erasure. You're not being loving, you're leaking energy. You're operating from guilt, not generosity. Think about this in your daily life. How many times have you agreed to something you didn't want to do, then felt irritated afterward? How many times have you forgiven someone just so you wouldn't look difficult, even though they never apologized? How many times have you listened to someone's problems when you were the one breaking inside? That's not virtue, that's emotional slavery. And I know those are strong words, but they're true. Because anytime you silence your truth to protect someone else's comfort, you are telling yourself that their feelings matter more than yours. Real kindness, the kind that heals, doesn't come from guilt. It comes from fullness. It's when you give because you want to, not because you're afraid not to. It's when you say no without guilt because your yes actually means something. It's when you forgive without pretending it didn't hurt. It's when your love includes you too. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect in action. And here's the paradox: the moment you stop trying to be liked, people start respecting you. The moment you stop chasing validation, people start paying attention. Because respect is magnetic, it pulls people toward you, not out of guilt, but out of admiration. When you start honoring your boundaries, you radiate something different. You no longer give because you have to, you give because you choose to. That choice is what transforms kindness from weakness into strength. So if you've ever asked yourself, am I too nice? Maybe the real question is, am I betraying myself in the name of kindness? Because that's where the shift begins. Start by noticing where you feel resentment. It's a compass pointing to where you've been giving too much. Listen to that signal. It's not selfish, it's sacred. It's your soul saying, enough. You don't have to stop being kind. You just have to stop abandoning yourself to do it. You can still be gentle, loving, empathetic, but now from a place of truth, not fear. And when you live from that space, people feel it. Your energy changes. Your relationships transform. And for the first time, your kindness becomes what it was always meant to be, not a survival strategy, but a reflection of real strength. Let's take a step back in time, to Florence, early 1500s. The city was a maze of power struggles, betrayals, and ambition. It was in that world that a man named Niccolò Machiavelli sat down to write The Prince. He wasn't a tyrant, as many people think. He was a realist. A man who had seen too much of human nature to keep believing in illusions about goodness and fairness. He wrote not about how people should behave, but about how they actually do. And that's why, even after 5 centuries, his words still sting with truth. When Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," he wasn't telling us to be cruel. He was revealing something most of us spend our lives denying, that love is fragile, but respect built through boundaries lasts. Now before you reject this as too dark or too cynical, think about your own life. How many times have you loved someone who took advantage of you? How many times have you been kind, patient, forgiving, and were rewarded with disrespect? Machiavelli wasn't saying that fear should replace love. He was saying that love without boundaries will always lead to pain. People's affection changes. Their loyalty wavers. But respect, the kind that's rooted in strength, keeps things stable. Machiavelli lived in a world of kings, soldiers, and politicians, but his lessons apply perfectly to modern life. Because whether you're running a company, managing a family, or simply trying to stand your ground in a relationship, you are, in a sense, a ruler of your own territory. The way you govern that territory, your time, your energy, your emotions, determines whether people respect you or use you. When you have no rules, no clear consequences, no limits, you become an open field anyone can walk through. But when you have structure, clarity, and presence, others automatically tread carefully. Let's translate Machiavelli's concept of fear. He didn't mean terror. He meant awareness. The kind of alertness people feel around someone they know not to cross. It's not about violence or cruelty. It's about a subtle understanding that disrespect has a cost. A boss who's too lenient loses authority. A parent who never enforces boundaries loses credibility. A friend who always forgives without change loses respect. And you? You lose power every time you allow someone to cross a line without consequence. But here's the twist. Machiavelli also warned that being feared alone is dangerous. Because when people start to hate you, their fear turns into rebellion. That's as true in politics as it is in personal life. If you become so cold, so detached, so defensive that no one feels safe with you, your relationships will crumble. The key, he said, lies in balance, commanding respect without breeding hatred. That's why he admired rulers who combined firmness with fairness, discipline with restraint. He knew that power without empathy becomes tyranny, but empathy without structure becomes chaos. Now imagine bringing that balance into your own life. It means you stop swinging between extremes, between being too nice and being too harsh. You stop apologizing for your strength and stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. It means learning to create measured fear, not through threats or anger, but through consistency. People respect what they can predict. They may not always like your decisions, but if they know you mean what you say, they'll trust you. Take the workplace, for example. A manager who smiles all the time, avoids confrontation, and wants everyone to like them will be undermined. But the one who listens, stays calm, and enforces boundaries consistently earns quiet respect. The same dynamic happens in relationships. If you keep forgiving someone who keeps repeating the same hurtful behavior, you're teaching them you can be crossed without consequence. But if you calmly step back, set limits, and stick to them, they start to see your worth in a different light. This is the Machiavellian principle reimagined for real life. Fear, when used wisely, protects love. It builds a perimeter around it. It tells the world, this is my line. Cross it, and I will act. And the fascinating thing is, once that energy is established, you rarely have to enforce it. People feel it. Your silence becomes your shield. Your boundaries become your crown. Machiavelli understood something profound about human nature, that people are motivated not by ideals, but by incentives and consequences. He saw that good intentions mean nothing without structure. The same applies to you. You can be kind all you want, but if people know there's no consequence for disrespect, they'll keep testing you. Not necessarily because they're malicious, but because human nature always pushes limits. That's why boundaries aren't barriers, they're definitions of value. You define what's sacred by how fiercely you protect it. But Machiavelli also gives us a warning. A ruler who becomes cruel, who rules only through fear, plants the seeds of their own destruction. In modern terms, if you harden your heart completely, if you start to see everyone as a threat, you lose what makes you human. Power without empathy isolates you. It's a lonely, empty victory. The goal is not to become feared at the expense of love, it's to cultivate a respect so deep that people don't want to disappoint you. And here's the beautiful irony. When you carry yourself with that kind of balance, calm authority mixed with compassion, you naturally become both feared and loved. Feared for your strength, loved for your fairness. People trust you because they know where you stand. They know you don't pretend. You don't manipulate. You lead with integrity. That's what true power looks like, not dominance, but presence. So let's stop thinking of Machiavelli as a villain. Think of him as a mirror. A man who forced humanity to look at itself without filters. His message was never be cruel. It was open your eyes. See the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Understand that love fades when boundaries break. Understand that respect requires structure. Understand that your peace depends on your willingness to defend it. And maybe, just maybe, the modern version of his advice is this: it's not about making people fear you. It's about making them think twice before disrespecting you. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're grounded. Because you know your worth. Because you've learned that kindness, when unguarded, attracts wolves, but kindness with boundaries builds kingdoms. Now that we understand the psychology and philosophy behind respect, let's talk about how to actually embody it. Because knowing the theory means nothing if you still shrink when challenged, still over-explain when questioned, still say yes when your whole body screams no. The real work begins in how you carry yourself, and the quiet power of presence. That's where authority is born. And authority, true authority, has nothing to do with aggression. It's not about control, intimidation, or dominance. It's about coherence, your words, your energy, and your actions aligning so consistently that people feel your strength even when you say nothing. Think about someone you know who commands respect effortlessly. They're not loud. They don't throw their weight around. They speak calmly, clearly, and when they say something, everyone listens. That's not charisma, it's self-mastery. Their power comes from a deep, steady place inside. You can feel that they won't tolerate disrespect, not because they threaten, but because they radiate certainty. That's what you need to cultivate, not fear through volume, but respect through consistency. The first step to commanding respect is mastering silence. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of strength. Most people rush to fill silence because they feel uncomfortable with it. They fear being misunderstood or seeming weak. But the person who can stay silent in tension, who can pause before answering, who doesn't rush to explain, commands attention. Silence says, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to decide what's right for me. It's a language of self-trust, and people instinctively respect it. The next time someone tries to provoke you, stay calm. Don't overreact, don't justify, don't rush. Let the silence work for you. You'll see how quickly the power shifts. The second step is learning the art of saying no without guilt. Many people think saying no means being cold or selfish. It doesn't. It means you value your time and energy enough to protect them. Every yes that goes against your values is a withdrawal from your self-respect. When you say no with calm certainty, not anger, not apology, you send a message that your boundaries are non-negotiable. The key is to make your no firm but kind, clear but grounded. You don't owe anyone long explanations. That doesn't work for me is a full sentence. So is I can't do that. You'll be surprised how the world begins to treat you differently once you stop justifying your limits. Third, don't repeat yourself to those who already understand. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is by over-explaining. When you keep clarifying your choices, you're signaling doubt. You're trying to be understood by people who may have no interest in understanding you. True confidence is silent clarity. You say it once, calmly, and then move on. You teach people how to treat you not by words, but by how you respond when they test your boundaries. Fourth, practice emotional neutrality. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being emotionally hijacked by other people's behavior. When you can remain composed in the face of provocation, you send a powerful message: I'm in control of myself, not you. The more emotionally reactive you are, the easier you are to manipulate. But when you stay calm, even in conflict, you project strength. People will test you less, because they'll sense there's no easy way to throw you off balance. It's not about being robotic, it's about mastering the pause before reaction. That pause is where real power lies. Here's another truth psychology confirms: people respect predictability. When your actions are consistent, when your tone, your words, and your boundaries don't fluctuate based on emotion, you become reliable in the eyes of others. That reliability builds authority. It's what separates leaders from followers. You don't have to shout to be heard when your energy already says, I mean what I say. There's also something called latent power. It's the quiet authority that exists even when not used. Think of it like gravity: you don't see it, but you feel it. Latent power is what makes people think twice before crossing you. It's not about fear of punishment, it's about recognition of strength. You build this power through consistency, restraint, and presence. The more stable your reactions, the stronger your presence becomes. People respect what feels solid. So, how do you start building that presence in your daily life? Begin small. Straighten your posture. Hold eye contact a little longer than usual. Speak slower. Breathe before answering. Set one boundary this week that you've been avoiding. Withdraw politely from one draining conversation without explaining yourself. These microactions may seem small, but they're rewiring your identity. You're teaching your nervous system that it's safe to stand firm. And yes, when you begin this process, some people will react badly. Those who benefited from your compliance will feel threatened by your clarity. They'll call you changed, arrogant, or cold. Don't take it personally. Their discomfort is just a sign that your energy has shifted. The more you stay grounded, the faster the dust will settle, and the right people will start to respect the new you. Because when your energy says, I don't tolerate disrespect, the world reorganizes itself around that truth. Remember, authority is not about control, it's about self-control. The person who can master their tone, their reactions, and their emotions without suppression becomes magnetic. People listen to them, trust them, and follow their lead because they feel safe around their consistency. That's the paradox of power: the calmer you are, the stronger you seem. The less you try to prove, the more others believe. In a world full of noise and overcompensation, calm confidence is rare, and that's exactly why it's respected. When you start embodying this quiet strength, you won't need to demand respect. You'll simply attract it. People will feel it in how you walk into a room, how you say no, how you stay silent when others panic. That's real authority. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that commands attention without saying a word. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember this: you don't have to choose between being kind and being respected. You just have to choose to be clear. Because clarity is the purest form of strength. When your kindness has boundaries, your words have weight, and your presence has peace, respect follows naturally. That's how you command without controlling, lead without forcing, and earn respect without ever asking for it. At some point, every person who's been too kind for too long faces a crossroads. You reach that moment where you realize you can't keep living as the version of yourself that everyone else prefers. The version that pleases, that explains, that carries the weight of other people's comfort while your own needs rock quietly in the background. You wake up one morning and you're just done. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. Tired of being the dependable one, the forgiving one, the one who always understands. That's the moment everything starts to shift. Because that's the moment you stop trying to be loved and start learning how to respect yourself. This is where true transformation begins, inside, not outside. It's not about learning new words to say. It's about unlearning the lies you've carried since childhood. The lie that says love must be earned. The lie that says peace is only possible when you stay quiet. The lie that says being good means sacrificing yourself. You see, most people who struggle with boundaries didn't become that way by choice. They were trained. Somewhere early on, they learned that the only way to feel safe or accepted was to comply. Maybe you had a parent who withdrew affection when you stood up for yourself. Maybe you grew up in an environment where anger was punished and obedience was praised. So you became good, not because you wanted to, but because you had to survive. Fast forward to adulthood, and that same strategy that once kept you safe now keeps you small. You people please not out of love, but out of fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as selfish. But here's the truth that changes everything: you can't build real love on fear. You can't build real respect on compliance. The foundation of both love and respect is authenticity. And authenticity always begins with boundaries. When you start setting boundaries, something magical and terrifying happens. The first thing that shows up is resistance. Some people will be angry. Others will guilt trip you. They'll accuse you of changing, of being distant or arrogant. Don't panic. That's not proof that you're wrong. That's proof that your boundaries are working. The only people who get upset when you start respecting yourself are the ones who benefited from your lack of respect before. Every boundary you set is like a door closing on manipulation and opening on freedom. But I won't lie, it's not an easy process. At first, it feels unnatural. You'll second-guess yourself. You'll feel guilt, even shame. That's because your brain is detoxing from years of over-accommodation. It will try to pull you back to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is unhealthy. But if you stay the course, if you keep honoring your limits, you'll notice something incredible. The world begins to rearrange around your new energy. People who drained you start to disappear. People who respect you start to appear. Conversations become lighter. Relationships become cleaner. You stop explaining yourself so much. You stop apologizing for taking up space. And for the first time in your life, you feel free. That's when you understand the real meaning of strength. It's not about becoming cold or hard. It's not about shedding your heart. It's about loving yourself enough to protect your peace. It's about recognizing that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. You can still be kind, but now it's a choice, not a compulsion. You can still forgive, but you don't forget the lesson. You can still love, but not at the expense of your dignity. That's what mature kindness looks like. That's the kind of kindness that commands respect, not pity. And yes, you'll lose people along the way. But that's not loss, it's refinement. When you stop abandoning yourself, the wrong people fall away, and the right ones finally find you. You'll notice that the relationships that survive are the ones built on mutual respect, not dependency. You'll stop chasing love and start attracting it. You'll stop settling for crumbs because you'll finally realize you were always the feast. Here's where it gets even deeper. Once you find this balance between strength and kindness, between power and compassion, something shifts inside you permanently. You become grounded. Your energy changes. You stop reacting to everything. You start responding from clarity. People feel it when you walk into a room. They may not even know why, but they sense it, the difference between a person who needs approval and a person who already approves of themselves. That's what real confidence feels like. It's quiet. It's calm. It doesn't need to prove anything. So no, you don't have to stop being kind. You just have to stop being unprotected. You don't have to give up softness, you just have to pair it with strength. Think of it like armor made of light. You can still shine, still love, still help, but now, nothing gets to wound you so deeply that you lose yourself again. Because you've learned the most important lesson of all, your peace is not negotiable. And if you ever forget that, if you ever start to doubt your worth, remember this, the world doesn't reward people who beg for respect. It rewards those who carry themselves like they already have it. Respect begins with you. It's not given, it's reflected. The way you talk to yourself, the way you keep your promises to yourself, the way you protect your boundaries, that's what teaches the world how to treat you. So as you move forward, carry this truth with you. Being good is not enough. Kindness without strength is vulnerability, but kindness with boundaries is power. Love without self-respect is dependency, but love with self-respect is freedom. You don't have to choose between being feared and being loved. You just have to become someone who cannot be ignored. Because when your kindness carries a sword and your strength carries compassion, you become untouchable. That's the point where you stop surviving and start leading your life. You stop reacting and start directing. You stop existing for others and start living for yourself. That's what real sovereignty feels like, when your heart stays open, but your feet are firmly planted. That's when you finally understand what Machiavelli meant all along, not that it's better to be feared, but that it's safer to be respected. And when your respect begins within, the world will rise to meet it. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below, I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.